Giles Grover is the co-lead of the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. Giles, good day to
Morning.
you. Good day to you. So
Morning.
let me first of all say, right, I've been to Grenfell, been many times, and I'm going next week. And anything I say now is not meant to you. It's not meant personally or anything. It's just that as a ordinary Londoner, which is what I am, it's boring. It's boring to hear the same people say the same things and nothing get done.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like a priority. So before we get into any kind of emotional stuff that I might do, let me ask you, Giles, what do you do? Tell me about the work that you do.
So we've been campaigning formally as a group since April 2019, and we're volunteers, we're leaseholders and residents. Essentially, as soon as we started finding out our buildings were unsafe, we started getting bills for 30, 40,000 pounds. Some of our colleagues on the team got a bill for £200,000. So we essentially started this group to make sure that the leaseholders and residents, the people that are the only victims of this scandal, don't have to pay for the mistakes of the government and industry.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed because it means we're on the same side and I can't have a fight with you. I was, I was looking for a fight today, and you can't, you can't you can't give me one. I mean, look, I was sat here on that Friday sunny afternoon when Lacanau House happened, right?
Yeah.
And then it was the sunny middle of night, 14 June 2017. When we had Grenfell Tower. And in my head, I think, up until I started to get calls from people like you, I thought it was a poor people thing. I thought it was a kind of social housing, they are less than us type thing. But the number of people who have saved all their money and mum and dad, the bank of mum and dad to give them, and their first property, and then they find they can't get the certification in order to move it on, and they've found latterly that the system itself isn't fit for purpose. Are those the types of people that you're working with then?
Yeah, it's often a lot of private leaseholders. We're very much in contact with Grenfell United, who supported us literally from day one of our campaign. We've got a lot of people who've got a private freehold, essentially, shared owners as well, whose landlords, housing associations. But as you say, the point is that it affects people from all walks of life, all ages, youngsters, families, old people, people who've retired, got a couple, handful of flats for their pensions. All over the country as well. So
I don't know if that makes it better or worse, Charles.
Well, it sort of helps to start getting in the public consciousness, and people realise that actually this is a national tragedy and a scandal that actually needs to be resolved. That's what the general public know. Whether the politicians know that or not just yet, we're still waiting to find out, really.
Well, they know it. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with whether they care enough to do anything about it, don't we? I mean,
well, the previous government
they definitely know it.
Yeah, the previous government probably, they didn't for 2 or 3 years after the tragedy. They just kept saying warm words, building owners, developers do the right thing. They didn't have any law to make them do that. So it kind of got a little bit better when Michael Gove came to office in September 2021. But the politicians, they're focused on getting the law through Parliament, quelling the backbench rebellions, dampening down the media storm. So we met him a number of times when the building safety bill was going through Parliament. After it passed and came to law, we kind of met him once or twice. The engagement wasn't as great. We do speak to MHCLG officials regularly. They say the right things, but actually doing the right thing and putting it into practice is still not there.
We'll get into doing the right thing because it might be, for lay people like me and you, it appears that doing the right thing is quite easy, and it might be a little more challenging than we are presenting. And let me ask you a couple of questions. It might be that you're not that special, because we've got Craig does some stuff. He met Michael Gove lots of times.
Yeah.
We've talked about people who, the phone calls are ignored to housing associations, the quality of housing. You're talking about the cladding, but we have the worst insulated houses in the whole of Europe.
Sure.
It might just be that the whole of the housing sector, we're talking about a housing bill going through Parliament, no fault evictions. I know that that's going to be carried through, but that was watered down under the last government. It might be, sir, that the whole of the housing industry is in a problem.
Yeah, I think we started as a cladding scandal, then pretty soon it was obvious there's a building safety crisis. It's not just about fire as you say, it's about social housing providers, it's about mould, it's about damp, it's about renters reform. But there was never quite, there might have been the will to try and change things from Michael Gove. Once you get to Treasury, once you got to Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor or Prime Minister, most people would just say, well, actually, the developers, the freeholders, they're the powerful lobbyists, they're the donors. That's probably one of the main reasons why it didn't really get through. Plus, a lot of the buildings were in Labour constituencies. So was that also another reason that they just didn't really think, oh, we'll have to do anything about it because, the voters won't vote for us in those city centres. So, yeah, we've now got a Labour government that we need to do the right thing if they're capable, have the political will to do it.
Well, that's really the money question, isn't it? Angela Rayner turned up yesterday. She sounded like, I am going to do all that I can to encourage. It didn't sound like we are definitely going to do X to me. Just take a listen, and it might be that I'm taking a different meaning from it. But certainly I was at home listening to the radio yesterday, and I didn't get a sense that we are definitely going to do something. Take a listen, Giles.
It must have been horrifying for the people in the early hours of the morning to wake up to what is an incredibly scary situation, and the work that has been ongoing on making sure remediation has to be sped up. I've been in the post a number of weeks now, and the thing for me is that the remediation work is still too slow.
So, you could take that either way. I'm just used to hearing platitudes. How do you receive it?
Well, it's a start because Angela Rayner hasn't said anything, and I appreciate Labour's, it's not even 2 months of being in office. We have met with Rushan Ali, who's a building safety minister. So it's a start that she's saying something. It's quite disappointing. It took an actual fire for her to start realising that, hang on, we need to do something about this. We do have commitments in the Labour manifesto. However, they're not the same commitments we thought we'd see based upon their policy platform. So it's all quite high level. We've met with officials and Rushanara, and we've been told our officials are working swiftly, but we don't know what that means. We don't know whether they're going to protect all leaseholders who are all innocent, whether they're going to still make us pay. We just don't know. And that's the thing. Grenfell inquiry reporting next week. We're hopeful that'll be the start of, meaningful change, but it's all still a bit vague and we're all kind of stuck in limbo, to be honest.
What did you hope for?
But we hope that, number one, because industry, because government, everyone says that we're the victims of the scandal, we're the only ones who didn't cause it, that the government will actually say, very simply, which is what we wanted Michael Gove to do, all leaseholders are innocent and should be protected and get the same protections. That would actually help provide a lot of certainty to the housing market. The problem is we're still focused on cladding, when the government's known for a while it's not just cladding. The cladding safety scheme is starting to get up and running, but the problem is a lot of those buildings, including mine, have been through remediation and we're being told actually you've got a shed load of risks still remaining. So everything just needs to be sorted in one go. They need to hold more of industry to account. The developers are now starting to fix their own buildings. There's no real oversight. You've got product manufacturers, architects, building control, warranty providers, insurers. They're the ones that should be paying instead of the victims of this scandal.
When you hear about the fire over the weekend, and actually there were two, weren't there? When you hear it, I just wonder, in your new position, how do you receive that? How do you hear that? How do you feel that?
Well, I was woken up on Monday morning by dozens of messages, and the first thing you think of, especially when you start seeing the images, you think it's Grenfell all over again. Thankfully, the London Fire Brigade, their actions on the ground are a lot more responsive, but it's a lot of luck, really, that we're avoiding Grenfell, because a lot of these buildings, we talked about 1,300 in London, the government's currently monitoring 4,630 buildings across the country. Estimates there are 11,000 buildings across the country over 11 metres that are unsafe. So we've said to the government repeatedly over the years that fire won't wait, and they're dicing with our lives, really. So every time you see it, you just think, oh God, just fear the worst. Thankfully, there are no lives lost, but people have lost their homes. People are now completely don't know what happens next. They're being housed in a leisure centre. Then we need to see the support on the ground for them. But we need to get this crisis fixed. We need to make sure people can be safe and feel safe in their homes. It's very simple. And, to me, it's just a moral thing. But I'm just an ordinary person.
I get that, and you know, because I've laid out my position. But I'm trying to argue against you and myself. Okay, so just work with me.
Sure.
So it's probably being made worse by Keir Starmer in order to prepare us for October.
Mm.
Nevertheless, there is a £22 billion hole in the finances. 9 billion, from my amateur calculations, is based on the doctors and the train drivers, right? So they've made a decision that we're going to try and get Britain quite literally moving again by dealing with that. Can you imagine what a proper cultural, systematic change to the building industry with proper regulation, what that would cost?
We can, but we've already had the regulations changed, and the regulations are now changing. The Building Safety Act is in place. The Health and Safety Executive is now looking after building control for certain
buildings. Yeah, but
buildings.
We're talking about, Giles, we're talking about implementation here.
Sure. Yeah, and that's been the problem. It's delivering it, and that's where the Health and Safety Executive is starting, but they're still getting up to speed with it. The point you made about the money is that was always the response from Treasury, because once everything gets to Treasury, it's a case of, no, we can't help you anymore. But we've shown and we've proven that you can actually raise the funds from industry. And there is already billions out there. It's 5.1 billion of taxpayer money, although 3 billion of that will be repaid through taxation. There's 3 billion through a levy. The social housing providers are also paying. So if you extend the scope of the funding schemes and you make sure that industry pays for it, you can solve this crisis.
Well, yeah, but it's
simple.
It's that, isn't it? It's very, I don't know, socialist. Let's use an American terminology, right? But what it does, the idea against it, is it frightens away big business. It takes away investment. It means that we don't get homes built because they're not making the profits they used to make. I'm not telling you I agree with it. I'm just putting a counter argument to what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And the developers are pushing back. We've seen all the politicians meet them and say we need to build 1.5 million homes, which causes us concern in terms of what happens to buildings they need to make safe. However, those developers, their profit margins, if you actually analyse it, if you look at the billions of pounds they've made, if you look at the billions of pounds they paid out in dividend payments to their directors, they do actually have a lot of money to spare. And the fact is they've had support for years through taxpayers. So it's about time they paid it back. And the fact is that more participants can pay whilst they're still building new homes. The profit margins, I say, they're something like 20% compared to global averages of 5 to 10%. The government gives VAT relief of 20 odd billion pounds a year to construction. So there's money out there. There's already money there. You can get a little bit more. And those developers, they're all moaning and whining. The way to solve that is by holding more industry actors to account. That'll placate their fears. And they can do that. But the problem is, do they have the will to do it?
Giles, we'll talk again. I may well call you after, I'm decamping. I'm taking the whole program to Grenfell. And I think we may well have another conversation after some of those. But I'll just bear in mind before we talk again that there is a lot of money that has been made and is still to be made. There are many people in that big house who have second homes. And as long as there is a profit to be made in housing, it is not in many people's interest to change anything about what's coming. And if we can deal with that when we talk next, then maybe we'll have a better chance. Giles, I appreciate you very much. This is BBC Radio London.